Hi, everyone. So it's Nina Collins here today on Friday. Very happy to welcome Tara Fields, Dr. Tara Fields, who's a licensed marriage and family therapist in the Bay Area. So we were just talking about the hellishness that's going on in the Bay Area, which we'll talk about in a bit. Also, Tara, I'm really glad to have you. Thank you. We're here today ostensibly to discuss kind of relationship fixes and common loops that couples get in. Tara wrote a book called The Love Fix, which is out in paperback. It's a bestseller. She's also been a frequent guest on every show that you could possibly imagine on radio and TV and Oprah and Dr. Phil. And so she's a very experienced radio, TV commentator personality. And we're very lucky to have you here. And she's also a relatively new Woolfer. She joined the community during COVID. So hi.
Hi, and honestly and truly, Nina, this feels like one of the most exciting things I've done in a couple of years. You know that I'm very authentic, and I said, oh, it's an honor when you asked me to do the interview, because this community has done so much for me during the pandemic. And it's been one of those experiences where, you know, I'm really big on reframing the negative, that if it hadn't been for the shelter in place, I wouldn't have taken the time to say, let me check those people out, those women out. And I thought, these are my people. This is my tribe. So thank you for that resource.
Thank you for saying that. That's so sweet. And I love reframing the negative. I have to say, this week I've had a few interviews with just really smart women who are just kind of offering up real truths, and reframing the negative is one of those things that's so fucking helpful, particularly right now. I mean, there's a lot that's negative, but there's nothing quite as draining as talking to people who are so down all the time. And not that, I mean, it's real. You have to acknowledge what's really hard right now, but perspective is everything in life, I often think. So before we get started with your book, just tell us about the Bay Area, because it occurred to me 2 hours ago. I was like, oh my God, we're supposed to talk to Tara at 3:00 and she's living in the middle of, you're literally in Marin County.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just turned off the radio, and Governor Newsom was doing a press conference. Even though we thought we'd experienced the most horrific fires ever, he said, this is unprecedented. There has been nothing like it, and they're out of control. And, you know, anybody who wants to deny climate change, it's because we've also never experienced this kind of heat. It's over 100 degrees, and we had lightning strikes that started all of this. So it's, you know, at this point, if anybody's listening who's in the Bay Area, it's always those little things like, I'm going to call up the Humane Society after this and say, you know, we've got the space. I'll be a foster parent. Those small things, putting out water bowls for the birds and the animals, but it's scary. It makes you feel very vulnerable on top of COVID. So
it's horrible. I saw on Facebook this morning that one of my serious boyfriends, when I was like 18 or 19, lost his house, and he and his family live there. And I just can't even imagine. It's a good idea, calling the Humane Society and leaving up all the water and all those things. Can you see smoke from where you are?
Yeah, no, we can't. I can't open the windows or doors. You're just blasted as if the fire is going on around the house, even though it's not, because the smoke is so overwhelming.
That is terrifying. And how do they, sorry, I know we'll move on, but how do they let you know in areas like that that you need to evacuate? I've only kind of seen.
Well, there are these great alerts that you can have on your phone, so that, you know, I just got one saying this area is being evacuated, be prepared. And of course, keeping your radio going, and everybody's been told you have to have that go bag. We never know, is it going to be for the earthquake or is it going to be fire? But the greater challenge, and I feel for the firefighters and elderly that are going into shelters, people that leave their animals, because then there is that issue of then getting sick.
Yeah, no, it's so scary.
I remember to be grateful. I mean, without, you know, just saying thank you, even to start thinking about, okay, where would I go? Oh, I have some place to go.
Yeah, no, to be an elder. I remember when 9/11 happened, we had to leave our dogs in our house. And then we went back to get them later that day. You know, it was such a, and it was real. My husband at the time had to walk like miles and go through police barricades to go rescue the dogs. And of course, we were super lucky and had a place to go. But it was really scary. Yeah, if you're 93 years old and you live alone, and Jesus, and you, God,
It is. So, I mean, I think just let's use the time to say, if you have any connections to people in the Bay Area and there's something you can offer, maybe you have a second home somewhere, or if you have an expertise like I do, having gone through a horrific insurance claim, and just, it was a nightmare. And I thought, God, I wish I could give this information to other people so they don't go through what I went through. That I just want to offer that, you know,
I
before
really
you.
think maybe you should write something on that subject. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how public you want to be about what you went through, but maybe there's a way to write it that could help people.
Yeah, well, we're still in a legal battle, so it's, you know, it's going back and forth. But having said that, you know, for all the Woolfers out there, please contact me and I'll get on the phone with you and say, do this, not that, because you got to protect yourself from the beginning.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know. We'll post about that. All right. So let's talk about your work, the Love Fix, repair and restore your relationship right now. So all couples argue, obviously. You're a couples therapist, family therapist. Do you do more couples or more family? Is it one or the other?
When I started out, it was mainly families, but if you're really a family therapist, you need everybody there, and that becomes a challenge. I do couples, I do individuals, I do a lot of women. Actually, my practice is very small now, and I'm doing, you know, mainly performance coaching for a company and seeing my old clients. But it's very creative doing couples therapy, as
Yeah.
it is doing family therapy, but also it's so profoundly healing. You know, I'll say to people, if you really want to accelerate your personal growth, do it within the context of couples therapy. You know, if you're with a therapist and you're doing more than just make I statements or technical stuff, but if you can get into the deeper work, and I talk about that in the book, and there are exercises you can do it on your own, which is someone's got to be the bigger one and say, okay, there's some good reason why you're angry. I notice this is a pattern. Tell me about what's underneath it. And if you can say, oh my gosh, this is exactly what happened with my mother, my father, I felt I had to keep my mouth shut, or with men who do the come close, go away. You know, that's one of the loops is, you know, they have overly meshed mothers. You know, they were used to mothers that would pull and pull, so that when a partner goes, honey, let's spend some more time together, all they do is get triggered and they go, my mother is going to suffocate me, I'll never get out again. So if you can do that work within a couple session, not only does it increase the intimacy, but then you can heal these old long-standing wounds. That's the opportunity in relationships.
Because, right, I get what you're saying. So because in relationships, it's where you're most kind of raw and vulnerable. It's where you're acting out all your stuff. So it's often interesting to me, right? The dynamics we get into with our romantic partners, we don't often get into with our friends, right? It's different. It's a relationship you can kind of walk away from. You can seek out who you want in a given moment. But with your partner, you're there all the time. And so it's a good, I've never thought of it quite that way, actually, that it is a real opportunity in your love relationship if you have someone you can work shit through with.
Yeah.
Really look at what you do that trips you up, right? Your patterns.
And for them to be your partner, you're in helping you look at it, you know, and the problem is if both of you get into wrong or right, or I'm more wounded, or yeah, but you did this, you can't do it. So someone has to get out of their ego and go, okay, honey, what's really going on? Is this reminding you of, you know, if it's a woman whose father eventually, you know, shut down, eventually abandoned her, or there were affairs. So trust is going to be an issue. So, you know, which is why trust is the foundation of a really good relationship. If you have that safety and trust, then you can drop the protections, be vulnerable, and use what arises as an opportunity for healing, which is also why I say, and research shows this, conflict in a relationship isn't good or bad. Successful relationships don't have less conflict or more conflict than the ones that are about to fall apart. It's how you use,
how you deal with it.
Yeah.
How you talk about it. That's great. No, thinking about trust as the foundation and some of these dynamics. I was bike riding with my boyfriend the other day, and he's stronger than I am, and so he goes faster. And he kept kind of going far ahead of me. And finally I said, and I wanted him in front of me because he's faster and I don't want to feel like I'm, holding him up. But
Yeah.
I finally got him to stop. And I said, when you go that far ahead of me, it makes me feel abandoned. And it was such a obvious, straightforward thing to say. And he was like, okay. And it was interesting. That was a moment where I did use something that I've learned about myself over all these many years. And it was not complicated. And it wasn't a big deal that, we had this exchange, but it really helped me actually to say it and for him to hear it.
Yeah. And I think because you've talked about him a lot, you got triggered, but it also really shows that, he's a mensch, he's a good guy. You told him that instead of saying, oh, what's the big deal? What do you mean abandoned? He said, oh, okay, let me just slow down. And then that starts healing. And, I'm sure you've already done this work. Where does that come from? That sense of, I'm a little girl, I feel like you're abandoning me.
Yeah. And it's always so surprising, right? The ways we react that are so old. Because I do feel at this point at 51, luckily I've had the opportunity to do a lot of work. So I feel like I'm better at this than I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20. I mean, there were many years in relationships where I was terrible at it. But it's always work, right? It's always the fundamentals of who you are will emerge in various situations.
Yeah, you did, and a key component is, and you did this, is your willingness to be vulnerable. Like, people want good relationships, or we want personal growth, but I don't want to be vulnerable. So it may have felt really vulnerable to go, I feel like I'm being abandoned.
Right.
So that's one of the keys. It's one of the keys for any kind of personal growth.
Yeah, no, I was really struck when I did a few years ago, I did a master's in something called narrative medicine at Columbia. And I also did a life coaching certificate. And at the time I read a lot of Brene Brown and her vulnerability, that classic, if anyone who's listening or watching hasn't seen it, there's a video that Brene Brown does. It's actually an animated video that she narrates about vulnerability. And it really stuck with me. The idea that you're strongest if you can express vulnerability. It's very hard for people to actually be mean to you if you're really authentic and vulnerable in the moment, right?
Yeah, because you're exercising emotional courage. And I think, we could really just stay on that, is that there's a difference between kind of being whiny and playing the victim.
Right.
And having the emotional courage to be vulnerable. And it's why, when you talk to somebody, if you go, you do this and you do that and you make me feel, as opposed to, I feel scared, I feel abandoned when you move ahead. How can somebody shame you or criticize you? But it takes courage, especially if you've got all this old baggage of people that did shame you or took advantage of being vulnerable.
Yeah. So is there a most common conflict loop? Like, I know there are many, and I want to hear what yours are. But
I had such a great agent, such a great editor, and what we spent the most time on, because I'd go over all my case studies, is putting together the most common ones. And I'm just trying. I would say, let me, because I don't know how much time we have.
Whatever. I don't want to keep you forever, but we'll go.
No. But with the pandemic. So, we can talk about right now.
Yeah.
I would say the conflict loop that's coming up and is the opportunity for most couples, and I'm raising my hand here too. I'm definitely raising my hand, is the grow together or grow apart. And that's the real test of a relationship it also happens with your friends. You have a tragedy, something's going on, you edit your contact book.
Totally.
Really see. So it's, all this stuff works with friends, relatives. So, when something happens, your partner loses their job, there's a pandemic and you're sheltering in place, your house burns down, your partner's diagnosed with breast cancer, your kid gets sick, whatever the heck it is, one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to grow together and create this incredible intimacy because we got through this together. We were there for each other. And wow, what a test that you really are my person. Or you grow apart. You grow apart. And that's been coming up for a lot of people during the shelter in place, because it's a time of trauma.
Yeah. So there probably there's no quick fix, although your book is called The Love Fix. But what is there something you can look out for in that particular dynamic, in that loop?
Yeah. The first thing with anything in life is change comes with awareness.
Yeah.
So the first thing, like you and I were talking, and you said, which one do you relate to? And I actually came up with one that we had to eliminate, and I didn't want to.
Yeah, I love that one. I want to talk about that because I relate to that a lot in my relationship. So we'll get to it.
And it also connects to, I think, what right now. Okay, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you and I love to talk. This is like to do this in a half an hour.
No, you're great. We could talk more.
So it's the first thing is to say, this is what's going on. This is our opportunity right now. So let's be aware of it. Let's really be aware of it. And then you start noticing your pattern. For most women, I'm generalizing, we are always on this path of personal growth, right? Let me do that workshop. Let me try, sign up for the Woolfer. Let me go learn that new skill. Let me join a book club, which is why if we lose our jobs, we do so much better.
Right. We fill our lives.
Because we have all these different sense of identity, and we get really, and I'm generalizing, we get really excited about learning stuff. And for a lot of men, not all of them, it's sort of status quo, and I do my mountain biking or I do this. And if you have this pattern, and I definitely fall into this with my husband, where I'm going, come on, honey, let's do this. Don't you remember when you came to yoga and you didn't want to do it and then you loved it? But I still have to nudge him that way. And, it's one of the reasons that women are the ones that are divorcing more in the last 15 years than men, because what happens is, and I'm generalizing again, unless men, they don't get involved with somebody else and they go, okay, I'm getting out of the relationship. For women, we literally outgrow the relationship.
Yeah, no, women initiate divorce much more than men do. It's
That's
really
right.
interesting.
Yeah. And not because
they generally fare better and don't remarry sooner or as much.
That's right. That's right.
Structure.
Yeah, and good for us too, because we don't do it because, I found somebody else, so I'm just going to be like a trapeze artist. I got someone else to grab onto so that I'm going to move. Like we just say, this feels better. I'm growing. I'm happier. When he goes away for the weekend, it's kind of nice. Like, why don't I have some more of this? So that's what I'm seeing a lot of. And there's a really good, case study where she is about to leave. And there's also the compassion towards the man, because, talking about feelings for us is a recreational sport for women. It's fun. It's really easy. Men are still learning how to do it. They're still not as supported in doing it. So it's also about, I just want to say, being compassionate towards men.
So if you're going to grow together or grow apart, what you really need to do, obviously, it's communication is key. Kind of acknowledging what a shit show this is right now, right? And
that's right. Yeah.
Seeing what's coming up for each of you and kind of acknowledging that this could tear you apart is probably the most important thing. That's so right. What about the catastrophier and the denier? Is that the loop? Is that what it's called?
So that's not in the book. It was really like, this because you
had to kill your babies. Yeah.
And I happen to really like the denier and the catastrophizer. And again, I'm generalizing. And it's interesting. I see this more in some of these more in straight couples. And I find that my friends and clients that are in same-sex relationships don't get into these conflicts. They're so much more creative, and they haven't been forced to be in these rigid roles. But having said that, I have found with the denier and the catastrophier that even my same-sex friends, there's always one. So
I'm the denier. I'm always like, it's okay. It'll be fine. It's okay. It's fine. Let's just keep going.
Yeah. So if you and I were in a relationship, we would be in that loop, because I'm the catastrophizer. I'm going, listen, honey, you don't get it. You don't have a go bag ready. The fires are coming. Oh, it'll be fine. I'm just going to, water but what happens, this is why it's important to, and it also does come back to this crazy life I've had and kind of being on my own. So I was always, I'm always very like, I'm going to fix everything. I'm going to be prepared. Blah, blah, blah. So where was I?
It's okay.
Okay, no, I got it. Wait, I got to finish this part. I have to, and then I'll shut up. I promise.
Okay, no, it's good.
Okay, so what happens is, if you're not being heard and understood, which is, I'm really scared. I'm scared the fires are going to come, or I'm scared, blah, 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 blah. The denier is then going to get even bigger. The more the denier says there's nothing to worry about, then the more the catastrophizer is going, I got to get you to take this seriously. So their roles get bigger and bigger. The way you heal that loop and turn it into what I call a circle of love is to go, let's say I'm the catastrophe, you're the catastrophizer. Mm-hmm. I would say, you sound really scared. Tell me more. What are you afraid of? And then, what do you need to feel safer? And then, boom, you don't have to catastrophize.
Yeah.
Because stop denying. I mean, it's really the antidote to a lot of these loops. It's being heard and understood. And
having your feelings affirmed, right? Having your experience affirmed and recognized.
That's right.
Not dismissed. I mean, being dismissed is one of the most, for me, being kind of ignored is so unbearable. So right, it's that dynamic of meeting the other person where they are, hearing them, not making them feel. I think one thing that happens with the catastrophizer and the denier is that you make the other person feel like they're crazy. Like you think the world's going to fall apart. What is wrong with you? Instead of and then you're right, it just pushes the two people further apart. It makes you feel
their roles have to get bigger, because the catastrophizer is going to still try to get the denier to see there's danger. The denier is going to go, oh, stop, you're like my mother, you're just catastrophizing.
Right. Let's do one other, I'm trying to look in the book, one other conflict loop that's really common. See the 5 conflict loops and the 5 circles of love, because I just love all of these. And also can you talk for a sec about the land of me?
Oh yeah, the land of me, which, oh God, it's like this brings back memories, because I remember going back and forth for years, I always called it going into ego land. It's all about me. We know someone who's modeling that perfectly right now, but we won't get into politics. So the land of me it's all about me. It's all about me. You need to do this for me. So when there's a conflict, somebody has to take a direct flight out of the land of me and come back to, oh, I love you. You're my beloved, or you're my best friend. Enough about me. Let me get out of my land. You talked about this before. Someone has to be basically mature enough, or evolved enough, or love enough, and to know that, do you want to be right, or do you want love?
Right.
But here's the whole key. This is what really hangs all of us up, is that we believe, if there's a conflict, that if we get into that other person's shoes and we really hear them, then we have to move out of our position and agree with them, which is, whatever it is, letting their mother move into the house, or, whatever the heck it is. But if you can, it's kind of what being assertive is, which is you open your heart, you're present, you really hear them and go, oh, I get it. Now I know why you get so scared when I leave town and go on vacation, because you think that I'm never coming back, just like that ex-husband of yours, and it turned out he was having 7 affairs. Oh, okay. And what happens is the person that's feeling wounded goes, oh my God, I feel so heard and understood. Go on that trip. It's really okay. But someone has to be the first one to get out of ego land and the land of me.
Yeah, people get so entrenched in couple dynamics. And I'm just thinking back to like previous relationships where I've been in couples therapy. And I mean, it really is true, right? It's obvious that trust is the foundation, because if you actually feel like someone wants to hear you and loves you and wants you to feel good in the relationship, it's just much easier to be vulnerable and talk. And the problem is, I think, when you let the bad stuff really build up and everyone gets so entrenched, it can be very hard to come back from it.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why sometimes in couples therapy, as long as it's articulated, so there's an intention, I will say to couples, okay, this session, you all get to go in your ego, just get it all out. Just get it all out, knowing that once the anger and the resentment is out, then the work is going to be, let's get underneath it, which are the wounds, which is the pain, because as I say in the book, anger is almost always a protection.
Yep, absolutely.
Right. Or to manipulate the other person.
Yeah. No, I loved that. I mean, it's very true. I spent a lot of my life like too angry, and then now I'm hardly ever angry. I think once you really, really learn to recognize that you're just using anger as a shield from, for fear. What about the idea, I often think that by the time you go to a couples therapist, you're doomed. How true is that? I mean, yeah. So like what do you think the percentages are of people who go to couples therapy and actually survive?
So anecdotally, I'm thinking back, I've been doing this for over 30 years, and not including these very healthy couples who come in and they've both decided they're going to get divorced and they want to be really good co-parents.
Right, which is a great thing.
But I would say, because there's always one person where there's a strong intention, and I'll always say, just get your partner in once or twice. Let's see what happens. Once they get into the process, most couples that I've worked with, and again, I'm just, maybe it's why they come to me and not somebody else, or, so maybe they've already read the book. They do end up repairing the relationship, because I think about emails, cards that I get, and I haven't, or I get ones where, thank you so much. I remember you saying in a couple, somebody said this to me the other day, it's been 20 years, and she's happily married now. And she said, I will never forget when you sat there in that session and you said, what are you doing with this guy? So, there are times, but here's the important.
I had a therapist say that to me once in a couple session, or say it to him, basically, kind of like, why are you, yeah.
Exactly. And sometimes it really is. And they get into that place of, okay, now we're going to move into all the good reasons, the stuff underneath the anger and the wounds, why you do love him and you're there.
Yeah.
But in this case, it really was, what are you doing with this guy?
Yeah. Yeah.
But also
that's heartening that you feel like most people really can repair.
Oh, absolutely. But it is true. They usually wait until it's too late. And I would say to people, whether you go in individually or couples, don't wait until you're in crisis. If you're just feeling curious, like, I wonder why this is going on, just with yourself. And also, if your partner doesn't want to come in, that's okay. You can still do the work. And I write about that in the book, which is somebody will come in and go, should I leave the relationship? And I'll go, except for that one time, and they were there a long time as couples, I'll say, I have no idea, but this is what will help you come to the right decision. Let go of trying to get Shlomo to change.
Yeah, right. Well, that's another trap, right, that people fall into, the kind of.
It's hard not to give up hope and do everything you can within the context of this relationship to make yourself happy. And either this power struggle you might not be aware of will dissolve and it will get better, or you will, in a very healthy way, without a bunch of baggage, work yourself out of the relationship.
Nice. All right. And let's see, I'm trying to think, there's so many things we could talk about. I forgot that in the beginning of the conversation that you're no longer doing as much private therapy because you have this cool job as like the woman in Billions. I don't know how public you are about it or not, but we'll be general. So Tara works for a company as kind of the in-house therapist, right? Is that the way to describe it?
Yeah, more the performance coach, but it was very funny. It was inspired by Billions, and I had and I won't mention the company, it's a tech company. So the CEO was in therapy, and he said, I have been using a lot of what you've been teaching me with my management team. And I kidded him because I knew he was into Billions, I was into Billions. Yeah. He said, someday when you're making millions and millions, you and I will be the white hat. I'll be the white-hatted Wendy. You'll be the white-hatted Axe, because they're so dark.
Right.
And this is why he's so successful. He sends me an email and I go, and he says, well, why don't we just give this a try, a few hours? And here it is 3 years later.
Sounds like a dream job.
It is. And the really cool thing is I had already been working remotely because the management team's all over the country. So this is not new to me, but it's also, there was so much to learn about that, because I really felt like I've never done private practice full time. I always kept that there as grounding, but I replaced Dr. Laura and I was doing TV, and then I went through an existential crisis and I said, I don't want to do more TV. And then the book happened.
Great. So you've had it sounds like a nice balance. My oldest daughter is studying to become a shrink right now, and she's already feeling like she doesn't think she wants to see patients 40 hours a week. She wants to kind of have a corporate job or some sort of institutional job and a practice. It seems like a nice balance.
And she can do 2 tracks while she's in graduate school.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So that's really fun. So you're like the Wendy on Billions, who's my favorite character. She's so good.
Wendy.
You're the good Wendy.
I know.
And employees come to you when they're in crisis, or does everyone have to see you?
No. The really neat thing is I see most of them regularly, the directors, the management, the CEO regularly. And this is why I love the CEO and the company, which is it's really creating, very similar to LinkedIn. They have a similar culture of compassion, safety, trust, but also using what Arise is, which is the connection to psychology, as an opportunity for personal and professional growth.
So smart. It's like just staying on top of whatever's going on for you all the time to help make you your best self, which
and because it's a remote company, there's always been the challenge if you don't have that day-to-day connection. So building that culture, which now all these other businesses are having to deal with. Anyway, it's been fantastic, and I'm so grateful for it.
Oh, great. All right. Well, thank you so much for talking to us today, Tara. So everyone can find Tara's website, tarafields.com, and check out the book, The Love Fix, to think about relationship, what's the word? Circuits or
turn your conflict loop.
Conflict loop. That's the word.
You said, how do we know about evacuations and stuff? It's a constant.
Where are you going to go? Where are you going to go if you have to evacuate?
Well, Sydney's in New York. Why don't I go stay in her house in LA? I don't know. We'll figure it out. Listen, thank you so much. And thank you. Namaste, my friend. If it wasn't for the Woolfer, I probably wouldn't be as good a performance coach and shrink.
Thank you, sweetie. Well, I love getting to know you, and we'll continue to get to know each other. And I really appreciate you talking to us about this stuff. Thank you, Tara.